Well, we're back again for another exciting conversation with Operation Injured Soldiers. We go through a series of webinars looking at how we can experience hope and how we can work through the realities of mental health and anxiety and depression and all of the elements that can impact us as we enter back into civilian life. Really, what does it mean for veterans to consider emotional health and the realities that come along with it? And that's really what this whole webinar series is about. And today we are going to talk about depression. And we're going to talk about maybe a different type of depression, maybe one that you've heard of or you're familiar with. I want to talk about something called quiet depression. And and it seems a little maybe nuanced to name it as quiet depression. Usually, depression is fairly quiet, but in terms of those that I've worked with coming back into civilian life, individuals who have gone through combat, this term quiet depression is one that we need to pay attention to because many veterans don't describe themselves as depressed. That wouldn't be a go-to phrase for them or idea or concept. And that's why it's called quiet depression. Typically, they'll describe themselves as tired, disconnected, numb, irritable, or just trying to get through the day. I don't know if you've ever had that phrase in your relationships before, but when someone says, "Hey, how are you?" I'm just trying to make it through the day. That's usually an indication that there's more going on. Here's the truth. Some battles of the most significant, or maybe some of the most dangerous battles that we face, are not the ones that are loud. Um, they don't look like the dramatic elements. They happen quietly inside, where people are learning to endure or to adapt or to push through. And before we dive into everything, I just want to frame this problem for us. And if you're following along here, I want to just walk you through what this looks like for those of us who want to maybe understand a little deeper of what's going on. Depression is not weakness. Depression is not a failure of character or grit. It is often the cost of carrying too much or for too long without relief. Strong people can still become overwhelmed when the load never lets up. In fact, I'm working with an individual right now who works full time, goes to the gym as much as he can. Um, he's recently gotten into a fire department, and he is very, very capable, very, very equipped, very, very driven. And as soon as he passed all his exams and he went through this journey of becoming a firefighter, as soon as the adrenaline left up, he just crashed. The truth is, we can only push for so long, for so hard before it starts to affect us. And isolation is not a form of failure or a sign of failure. Isolation is not giving up. Uh, it's often the nervous system's attempt to stay safe after too much hurt or too much disappointment. Pulling away does not mean you don't care. It means connection has started to feel risky. Hope is not just positive thinking. Hope is not pretending things are fine or forcing optimism. Hope is the belief that a next step is possible, even when the future feels uncertain. And healing is not about erasing pain, but regaining connection and meaning. Healing doesn't remove the scars of what you've lived through, it helps you carry them differently. It's about reconnecting to yourselves, to others, and to a sense of purpose that pain does not get the final word on. Now, I want to talk about this just for a minute because I think it's really important. I don't know if any of you know anything about scar tissue, but interestingly enough, scar tissue is never done healing. It's always healing. It's in a constant state of healing. In fact, if you don't get enough vitamin C, you can actually experience something called scurvy, which, for those of you who know anything about nautical realities, scurvy was when they didn't have enough vitamin C because of spending so much time below decks and all of that. So the military actually created something called limeys, which were lime wedges essentially that were chock full of vitamin C, and they made people eat them because when you get scurvy, what happens is scar tissue opens up and your wound opens back up again. And here's why I bring all of that up, and here's why this is really important. Our mental health, our emotional health, those are like scars. They're in a constant state of healing. And if you don't care for it, what happens is those scars can open back up and spill over into the other areas of your life. And so as we go through here, I want to talk through not only how do we frame the problem here and understand depression isn't weakness, isolation isn't failure, hope is not positive thinking, and healing is not about erasing pain. It's about walking through this understanding. Sometimes depression is a reality of what you've been through. It's not a failure to isolate. That's actually a reaction of what you're going through. You can't wish your way out of depression. It's not about positive thinking or mindset. That can help, but that's not going to get you out of it. And healing is a continual process. And I often get asked, what does depression look like? I just want to pull this up for you here because there are some common signs and symptoms. Um, Depression can look like emotional numbness or flatness. It can look like irritability or anger replacing sadness. By the way, irritability and anger are some of the most common signs of unprocessed stress and pain. If you are a man and you are stressed, most of the time it's going to come out as anger. That's common in what I see. Withdrawal from relationships, a loss of purpose or direction, and sleep disruption. Now, here's why veterans experience, oh, and also substance reliance. So that's coping with alcohol and or pharmaceutical capabilities, whether that's marijuana or opiates or something to help take the edge off. Here's why veterans tend to experience this quiet depression and the signs and symptoms that come from it. Training for self-sufficiency. So military training reinforces strength through independence and self-reliance, which usually serves the survival and mission success. But over time, that same strength can make asking for help feel unsafe or unnecessary, even when support is needed. A mission first mindset, living mission first teaches people to delay personal needs for the sake of the objective in the team. And when the mission ends, many struggle to relearn how to notice and respond to their own emotional and relational needs. Now, Kyle, you and I have talked about this a couple of times before, but I want to pause and just note that the Army had a phrase for a long time: suck it up and drive on. And that is the epitome of the mission first mindset. We have a mission to accomplish. This stuff happened. We're not going to take time to talk about it. We can always take time to talk about it later when we unpack or process, or when we get stateside and we're going to sit down for 24 hours and decompress. And then by decompress, I mean go drink alcohol and do other things to try to forget what happened. But here's the reality: the body keeps the score. There is no such thing as suck it up and drive on. That'll get you through in the front end, but you can only suck it up and drive on 10, 15 times before it starts to take its impact if you don't deal with it.
Yeah, and with that, Josh, I think that's a reality even after the military. It's something that you don't get away from.
Yeah.
Uh, that's really hard because then it just compounds over the years. So, I've been out for 19 years now, and the amount of that I still see in myself, like just suck it up, don't worry about it, just get over it, um, is pretty significant. I think veterans as a whole probably see that quite a bit. We were never, we say, like you said, we decompress a little bit. That's what we get. And then you go right back to training and preparing. There was never really a good way to decompress. And then on top of that, you're military. So the attitude is you're supposed to be the best of the best, the toughest of the toughest, and we are. But what we don't get told is that you're still human. Your body still works the same as everybody else's. Your physical body might not respond the way everybody else's. Your reactions get better when you're in stress. They don't get worse. So
Yeah.
it's something that I think if everybody was quite honest with themselves, we that's something you have to deal with, and learn how to not just suck it up and drive on, but kind of feel those emotions when they do come.
I think so. And not only that, but acknowledging that this is a reality that everybody goes through. And no matter what, as you said, they could try to tell you that you can't emote, but you're still human. And so this is a human thing. This is a human experience. And there's another piece of this is just a couple other realities that are important to note. One, that you have a loss of identity after service. This is something that I work through with a lot of individuals when they come back or they're working through. The military does provide purpose and structure and belonging. In the Marine Corps, they call it the esprit de corps or the band, the brotherhood kind of commitment feeling. Um, and when your identity is lost or disrupted, many veterans are left asking, uh, not just what do I do now, but who am I without the uniform? Who am I now without this sense of camaraderie or this sense of brotherhood? And we've talked about this in previous webinars, but there is a reality to moral injury and also chronic hypervigilance. Moral injury occurs when deeply held values are violated by actions taken, actions witnessed, or actions that could not be prevented. The pain is not fear based, but conscious based, often carrying guilt, shame, or spiritual distress. This doesn't happen all the time, but I have worked with individuals who, because of what they did to survive or what they did in combat, struggle on the spiritual side of knowing what maybe the scriptures teach. And it's just a reality that people work through. Additionally, in this chronic hypervigilance, the nervous system learns to stay alert in order to survive dangerous environments. When the alertness never shuts off, it exhausts the body and mind, contributing to irritability, sleep disruption, and emotional burnout. I actually uh, listened to a TED talk a while back from a trauma doctor who has helped to reframe stress in the way that they handle trauma in the OR and in the operating room or the emergency room. And she refers to this state of hypervigilance as ready mode. And the thing is, they prepare themselves when they're going to enter into a high stress environment of caring for people who are in all kinds of pain and bad shape. You need to be stressed out. You need to be in ready mode. You need to be ready to go. And I thought that was a really great way of looking at it in terms of if you're in combat, you're always on high alert. You're always ready. You never know when the next thing is going to come. And yet, and this is the most important part, when you get home, you don't have to be ready anymore. When you go out on a date, you don't have to be ready. When you go to the restaurant, you don't have to be ready. And the problem is that if we are in a constant state of ready mode, we never get a chance to let down. And after a while, the brain, the body, and the neurochemicals that are a part of this experience, they can't sustain us anymore. And then we what? We crash. You can only ride the roller coaster for so long. You can only ride so high before you start to tank. And a typical response to all of that would be depression. You're not bad. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you, quote unquote. You're just physically, from a biological standpoint, feeling the symptoms of an overreactive nervous system. And your body can only handle it for so long. And so I want to talk about now what's in all of this, what's really going on, what's really happening here. Because if we can take things one level deeper, and I do want to spend some time unpacking this, is that depression is a nervous system issue. It's not just a mood issue. So sometimes, oh, Kyle, you got a hand up. You want to say something?
Yeah, Josh, I was just going to mention it. I know we talk a lot about the veterans, but one thing I don't want to overlook or not kind of address too, or feel like it's not possible, but our families that are home and
Yeah.
stateside, that go through that same kind of level of readiness, like the doctor was talking about, um, and the amount of stress that they're under. I think that's a good thing too, even for our military personnel that don't technically see combat.
Yep.
Um, the that really plays across the battlefield for everybody, no matter
Yep.
what, environment they're in. So I think that's a good reminder for those that might be listening in that there's no definition of what would qualify you to feel like this or go through the same thing.
Totally. I'm so glad you brought that up because that actually does tie into what we're saying here, that depression is not it's not just a mood issue. So for years, people referred to depression as a mood disorder, but depression is a nervous system issue. Depression often reflects a nervous system that has been overworked by prolonged stress, danger, and loss. And Kyle, as you bring up, that could be anybody. That's not just military personnel who've seen combat. Life can be stressful. Loss can be stressful. In fact, somebody was in my office today who they're going to lose a loved one really soon, and they're just processing through they've done a lot in that stress that has not been healthy for them or the people around them. When the body stays in survival mode for too long, energy, motivation, and emotional range, they start to narrow. And the goal of the work is actually to widen the window of tolerance, widen the window of working through these things, and 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 hopefully in that you can grow from it. This is not a personal failure. It is a system that needs safety, regulation, and support. There's a lot of research coming out right now about healing from depression. And the research is showing that if you want to heal from depression, you want to heal from stress, you want to heal from this prolonged pain to your nervous system, you can only find it in safe, confessing communities where you are with a group of people where you can share what's going on. It's totally safe, meaning people will accept you, they'll understand you, they'll keep confidence. And so finding, and we'll talk about this too, finding ways to integrate back into community is actually a really important part of the healing journey. Um, we talked about this in previous webinars, but trauma, it keeps the brain in survival mode. So if if you're in high traumatic situations, your brain never gets a chance to shut off. And even when the danger passes, the brain may continue to act as if it hasn't passed, and it may keep your body tense. It may keep you on edge. It may make you to believe that the people in your life who love you the most are actually threats to you, and you can't trust them, and they're out to get you or hurt you in some way. And over time, this can wear down your hope, it can wear down your relationships, and it can even wear down your physical health. They're finding right now that if you don't deal with these symptoms of depression, these unprocessed stresses, it could actually have serious implications on your physical health. Joint pain, muscle fatigue, headaches, high blood pressure, higher risk of cancer and cardiovascular disease. So much of the body is controlled by how we feel emotionally. And I think as I've taken some time to think through what this could look like here for all of the friends here at OIS, hope is the belief that action is possible, that change is possible. I don't have to stay like this. I don't have to live like this. I can do something to change this. It's not about optimism or positive thinking or faking it till you make it. It is the sense that movement and change can still happen, even just a little bit. I can keep one foot in front of the other. I can keep moving forward. I can be a little bit more different today than I was yesterday. When hope is present, people begin taking small steps even before they feel better. Those steps, taken consistently, are often what we build hope itself. In my world and in my work, we actually call that recovery. Now, some people balk at that a little bit because we think that recovery goes along with addiction. It's not. Recovery is a step of growing from depression. Recovery is a step of healing. And so some of us, if we go through these massive journeys of pain and we are experiencing some form of depression or we're hurting on the inside, we may have a recovery journey that will take years. And the goal is that in one of the things that I strive for with my clients is I don't need you to get 100% better tomorrow. I'd be super happy if you were 10% better 6 months from now. And sometimes people don't like that because they want the whole 100. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, I want the whole 100. I want to be better tomorrow. Well, you didn't get here overnight, which means you're not going to get to the other side of this overnight. But if you're a business owner and your company does 10% more profit, grows in profitability 10% more every 6 months, that'd be really great. If you're in school and your grades are 10% better every 3 weeks, that'd be really great. If your marriage was 10% better 6 months from now than it is right now, if you were having 10% more meaningful conversation, 10% less fighting, and 10% more sex, we would all say that's pretty good. I would take that 6 months from now. The whole 100 can be really, really hard to achieve, but 10% works. And we'll talk about that too as we go through. Because I really do want to talk a little bit before we get into some case studies here and unpacking some of this. I want to talk a little bit about tools that can help us as we consider what is growth, what does healing look like. Um, I call this one the 3-layer check-in. The 3-layer check-in helps to slow the movement of the moment and reconnect awareness without forcing insight or solutions. So what you do, you start with your body, noticing physical sensations like, where do I feel tension? Where do I feel heaviness? Where do I feel restless? The body usually tells us that we are emotionally compromised before our brain does. A lot of great research comes from a man named Bessel van der Kolk, but he wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And really the body is a primary indicator of, hey, I'm not doing okay. So you check, okay, what am I feeling in my body? Next, you name the emotion that feels closest to that feeling. So if I feel tightness in my chest because I'm stressed, I got to name the emotion. Okay, I feel tight in my chest, so that must be anxiety. I recognize it in my body, step one. Layer two, I think about the emotion, and I do that without judging it about whether it's right or reasonable or crazy or I shouldn't feel this way. Just know I name it. And then I try to notice the meaning or what's the story that I'm telling myself. And remember that those stories can be really powerful. Um, I had this just a few weeks ago. I was working with a client, and the client came in and was just really struggling with something, but couldn't figure out why they felt these strong symptoms. And so we just stopped and I said, okay, close your eyes. Where do you feel this stress in your body? And she put her hand on her chest, a tightness in her chest. And I said, okay, where is that coming from? And she said, I feel sad. And so this sadness that she felt was causing this pressure on her chest. And then I asked her to try to tell me about why she was feeling that way in the story that she was telling herself. It's a very simple way, without trying to get too heady, without trying to get too much insider information, of just recognizing the emotion. If you're tracking along with me, this comes from two different streams of therapy. One is called Gestalt therapy, which is about making ourselves feel whole, and narrative therapy, which is about making meaning out of the emotions we have and learning to tell ourselves a better, more true story. Another thing that you can do, and this is where I find this to be so helpful. Again, talking about not the whole 100, but we're talking about 10%. Um, when depression or trauma are present, the future can feel overwhelming and unreachable. That's that whole 100. Like, this is overwhelming. This is unmanageable. I can't do this. It's too much. Shrinking the horizon means shifting focus away from fixing everything and toward the next small, manageable step. Instead of thinking, how do I get my life back? Ask the question, what is one 10% action I can take this week? Instead of saying, I don't want to feel anxious anymore, saying, what's one thing I can do to feel 10% less anxious this week? Small actions restore a sense of agency. They give us a feeling of control. They make things more manageable. And it's usually the first building block of hope. Another thing that we can do, and this again goes back to the power of connection. Trauma often makes connection feel exhausting or unsafe, even when loneliness is painful. Re-engaging connection works best when it is low demand, predictable, and emotionally safe. This might look like being around people without talking much, showing up consistently without pressure, or connecting through shared activity rather than conversation. Connection begins with presence, not vulnerability, and safety comes before depth. Can I just say a word on this? Because this is one of those areas that I get really irritated with movies, because when you watch movies, they show a bunch of people sitting around a circle, and the expectation is that everybody's going to share something when they sit in that circle. And I just got to tell you, if you ever go to a recovery group, you don't have to share anything ever. In fact, one of the guiding rules is, if for me anyway, is that if you just want to be there and show up and have other people talk, and it's just safe for you to be quiet, then it's safe for you to be quiet. It's okay. Like, it can be really hard. It can be really scary to talk about what happened, talk about what you're feeling, talk about what you're going through. There's a subset of the human population that feels really uncomfortable talking about how uncomfortable they feel. It just makes them more uncomfortable. I know it's right, Kyle, but like, when we are uncomfy, we don't like to talk about how uncomfy we are because it makes us feel more uncomfy.
Yeah, I'm in that group.
Right. I figured because you were chuckling. But that can be so hard. And finding ways to re-engage in small, safe, consistent ways are really important. And I'm going to drill it down here a little bit, because I've been sharing some case studies with you, and I'll walk through this one with you because I feel like this one is really helpful, especially when you just understand the nature of depression. You just can't pull yourself out of it. Sometimes depression can be a really, really long journey, and it might take 6 or 7 months before you start to feel better, or, as one of my friends, start to feel good again. And that can be a long journey. And so I just want to walk through this case study with you. Um, Let me see if I can pull it up here. Yeah. All right. Mark served 20 years in the infantry with multiple combat deployments. He retired medically after an injury that transitioned quickly into civilian life without preparation. On the outside, Mark appears stable, married, employed, involved with his kids, but internally he feels disconnected, irritable, and increasingly isolated. Mark doesn't describe himself as depressed. He typically just says he's tired and over it. He avoids social gatherings, feels uncomfortable and in unstructured time, and becomes easily frustrated at home. He believes he should be grateful, which makes him feel guilty for struggling. This one's super common. Like, I'm not depressed. I'm just over it. I'm just tired. I don't want to hang out. And I don't know if anybody's ever said this, but it's something like, well, I could have it so much worse. I mean, there's starving kids in Africa, so I really shouldn't feel that bad about what I'm going through. Well, you know what? There are starving kids in Africa, and you can feel bad about what you're going through. We don't have to sake one for the other. We don't have to let go of one for the other. If it's hard, it's hard. And here are some core struggles that Mark has. He's had a loss of identity and purpose after service that happened. Emotional numbness expressed as anger or withdrawal. Isolation masked as independence. Difficulty asking for or receiving help. A belief that slowing down equals weakness. And here's what happened. Mark's nervous system remained in survival mode even when the mission was done. Without structure or clear role, he feels useless and unseen. It's just a recipe for pain and frustration and tension. Um, Here's what helped. And this is crazy because I'm a therapist, but I'm going to say it anyway. Mark did not initially seek therapy. That wasn't his best step forward. What helped was safe, low pressure connections, meeting weekly with another veteran where there was no fixing, no advice, and no expectation to share deeply. Over time, naming the loss and the grief helped restore a sense of agency. He began redefining strength as engagement with life, not endurance of pain. He needed to talk to somebody. Talk to somebody who understood, talk to someone who had been there, talk to someone who knew what it was like, didn't try to change him, didn't try to fix him, just acknowledged his reality and gave him space. And after a while, he started to feel like he had some control over his life again. Now, here's a couple of questions. Um, in what ways does Mark's depression show up differently than sadness? See, that's a big one. See, oftentimes when we look at people who are depressed, we're like, oh, we think of someone who's tearful and they don't want to do anything and they're really sad and they cry all the time. That's not that's not true. Sometimes it can be that way. Sometimes it can just look like being really tired or not having a lot of motivation. Where do you see survival strategies that once helped him? Well, source of independence, isolation. I could do it myself. I got it. I don't need anybody. My favorite phrase is, I got this. And usually I'm like, you don't got this. I mean, you can tell yourself you got this, but you don't got this because none of us got this. Okay. How might unprocessed loss be affecting his relationships and mood? I don't know. Is it possible that he lost friends? Is it possible that he lost his sense of purpose? Those are things to process through. And how does redefining strength change what healing looks like for him? He had to redefine that strength was a way of engaging in life again and doing some of the hard things of talking to someone else, um, not necessarily sucking it up and driving on or just dealing with it because that was hurting him. Um, here's one for a military spouse and caregiver. Um, by the way, just so we know, all of the names of these scenarios have changed. These are not the actual names of people. And if this is close to a situation that you've been through, or that is purely coincidence. Um, Angela is married to a combat injured veteran and became his primary caregiver after his return home. Over the years, her life slowly narrowed, career goals were paused, friendships faded, and her emotional needs were set aside in service of keeping everything running. This was a 7-year journey for Angela. 7 years of working through and we might successfully argue it's still going on. But those 7 hard years of losing relationships, slowly narrowing what she was doing, um, giving giving up her career goals, her friendships, everything, just just to keep the family running, to keep her husband going. Angela doesn't describe herself as depressed. She describes herself as responsible, needed, and my favorite word, fine. Can we just have a word about fine? If someone tells me it's fine, it's not fine. If they say I'm fine, they're not fine. And if they say everything's fine, nothing is fine. Fine is an acronym for feelings in need of expression. That's what fine is. Yet she feels chronically exhausted, emotionally invisible, and resentful. Feelings that immediately trigger guilt because she says I shouldn't feel this way. She believes that acknowledging her own pain would be selfish or disloyal. You know, if you're going through this and you're a caregiver, I'm just going to ask you a question. Who helps the helper? And I'll tell you, I ask that question a lot. And you know what the response is almost immediately? Nobody. Nobody helps the helper. That's a telltale sign that you are working through some exhaustion and some burnout. Her core struggles here. Um, Burnout masked as competence. Like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to keep doing it. Loss of personal identity. I am what I do. Chronic guilt for wanting some rest or space. I don't have time for me. Emotional isolation despite constant responsibility. Whenever I get a moment to myself, I just want to withdraw. And lack of permission to name her own grief. Like it was never okay for her to say, wow, this was really hard for my husband, but wait, this is really hard for me. This is hard on me. And not feeling there's a space to do that. Here's what helped. Do you know what she didn't need? More coping strategies. You know why? Because people who do this every single day have figured out how to cope with the stress of doing it every single day. She needed permission to matter again. She needed permission to be able to say, I'm hurting too. Naming her losses, naming the reality that she gave up on her dreams, that she put her own career aside. She lost some relationships and friends. Um, that reduced shame and allowed grief to surface safely. Rebuilding one life giving relationship outside of her caregiver role helped her connect and reconnect with her identity as a whole person, not just a support system. Wow, can I just tell you that if you are a caregiver and you do not have a consistent friend that you meet with on a regular basis, that's one of the easiest things to do. And sometimes also one of the hardest things to do because you actually have to like do the work of reaching out. But one of the best things for you is just have somebody that you can connect with who reminds you that you exist beyond caring for the person that you're caring for. That's true of spouses of veterans. That's also true of spouses with kids. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the identity of our kids that we forget that it's okay for us to have friendships beyond them. A couple of questions that are good for us to think through. One, how does Angela's depression differ from what we typically expect depression to look like? She's highly motivated. She keeps it going. She's not crying in a corner. Like she keeps working, and in her stress, she is continuously burning out. What emotions does she avoid and why? Well, she avoids grief, probably avoids anger, doesn't pay attention to what she's really feeling. How can responsibility and strength become barriers to healing? Well, she's got it all figured out. She's got a plan for everything. She's learned to compensate and deal with all the stress, and all of her strengths masks her weakness. Why do guilt and loyalty keep Angela from acknowledging her own needs? Well, because if she says I need help, then she's going to feel bad because nothing bad happened to her. She's the one who's supposed to be fixing everything. What parts of Angela's identity have been sidelined or lost? She doesn't have friendships. She can't see who she is beyond caring for her spouse or her kids. And what would it mean for her to believe that her well-being matters too? Here's the reality. If we are struggling with depression, we're human. And if we're human, we deserve the dignity of recognizing our own humanity and saying, this is really hard. This is tough. It's okay to go to a caregiver's retreat. It's okay to take time for yourself. It's okay to acknowledge that what you're going through is tough too. Depression doesn't always look like we're crying in a corner or we're really, really sad. It just doesn't. It has all kinds of different ways of manifesting, and paying attention to it, being aware of it, knowing that it's quiet, that can really help. I'm just wondering, like, kind of as we go through here, Kyle or Billy, if you've got any questions, love to be able to chat through this or maybe answer a few more.
I'm good.
Sweet. Kyle, what about you? You got anything to add?
Well, I will say this. When we start talking about, like, especially with the caregivers, I could only imagine what that would be like from a spouse's perspective. And one thing that I think would be good to name, how we're talked through the naming is, the spouse lost something too.
Yeah.
What with whatever injury they're battling, their spouse is battling, that was a piece of them as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think we always make that connection that if my husband or wife comes back and they're struggling with something because they're now not the same person, they're missing a leg or an arm or they can't see, whatever that looks like, that really affects the other spouse too, and that's because that's a piece of who they are.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a probably a good reminder for those people that are taking on that duty to care for somebody or a veteran or even a parent or something at this point, can have that effect on them. So,
Totally.
and then I think of, like, for myself, that when you said they all look different, from a veteran's perspective, I think it's very easy to completely miss the depression symptoms that we might have
Yeah.
in our friends because we're so good at putting on a mask.
Yeah.
It's something that I've struggled with for many years. Is you cannot show your true emotion, or or react the way a normal civilian would, because you're trained and expected to carry on,
Yeah.
and keep moving. That suck it up and drive on is not just a something that we talk about and joke about. It's something that you really have to live. And you get into the combat realm and, clearing houses, doing route clearance and stuff. You don't get a choice in those situations, but to take a deep breath and keep rolling.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I would, be a liar if I said that it didn't bother me. And
Yeah.
that's something, one of my tactics, just put on a clean smile and go about your day, because really it's about, making sure everybody else around you is okay first, and then the rest of it you just bury.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I think is a great and just honest, like a great honest perspective that I think a lot of us hold because we don't want to make other people feel worse. Our job is to take care of the people around us. And yet, we also have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Like, I'm okay if you want to put 10 people on a list of people you need to take care of. Just make sure you got your name on that list too. If other people are worth taking care of, then you're worth taking care of. And it's okay for you to take care of you too. So, so that's quiet depression. It's really important that we realize it doesn't always look like the way we think that it's going to look like or the way the movies tell us, and how we handle it can be different. hopefully this has been helpful, and we're going to continue on. We've got more that we're going to be talking about in this webinar series, but if you've got any questions about this, you want to reach out about this, you can reach out to me. Pam has my information. I'd love to be able to connect with you and give you some more thoughts and work through that. So grateful for all of you, and we will talk with you later.